This dress from 1953 was donated to me by a follower. It belonged to her mother, Patricia. Patricia and Vincent were married on October 3rd of 1953 and in West Newton, Massachusetts. The dress is blue lace, and as found, it was in very poor condition with a lot of the lace being torn and actually large chunks missing from the hem and holes throughout. The underarms were starting to deteriorate, and the front had either faded or was dirty. I was not quite sure what we were going to find once we washed it. And so I knew going into this that there was going to be even more lace breakage. And of course, you just really never know exactly what you're going to get into once you start on a project. But I was determined to try to work on this. And I'm telling you, this ended up being one of my most time-consuming projects yet. But stick with me. So I'm starting off with my usual retro wash and a little bit of washing soda in Dawn, and I'm doing it in cold water because I believe the fabric is rayon. So I'm trying to minimize shrinking, and as I'm moving it around in the water here, I'm starting off getting a little bit of the brown kind of coming out, and then it starts coming into a blue tint into the water, kind of a blue-green. So I just did a very brief 10-minute soak. I took out that water and then decided to, look at there, you can see that water is just turning blue as it's draining. You can see it there again in the cold rinse as well. So I thought perhaps adding a little vinegar to the water for a next brief soak could help maybe set the colors, and also vinegar can help to clean. So I did another brief soak in cold water with the vinegar in it, and there was more blue water. And then I did another cold water rinse, and there the water was clear. So even though that was very brief and gentle soaking, a lot more lace had torn, which I was expecting, but it ended up being far more than I expected. So I let that drip dry, did a towel roll, and let it air dry in the mannequin. And with it being rayon, even with cold water, there was some shrinking, so I kind of helped ease that hem down with some weights while it was drying. So here's what the sleeves look like after the soaking. So they are so torn, and I just knew that they were not going to be savable. So I took them off. I decided to try to dye some lace, even though, of course, it's not an exact match of the pattern of lace. I found some lace on Etsy, and I had some Rit dye that I was going to try doing a sample on. So I have a little bit of the lace here, and I'm just kind of going to pull it out and see where we're at, and it's nowhere close. And I had the sleeve wet because, of course, fabrics are different in shade when they're wet from when they're dry. So with nylons, it says to add some dish detergent. So now I'm adding a different color of Rit dye, and this was a Kentucky blue, and that is much closer. So I'm adding a little bit more to the dye bath, and it's a little too bright. So to tone it down, I'm going to add a little bit of sage green, and these are all just dyes I had on hand. And this one's sage. And so I'm doing another sample, and not quite there yet. I need to just kind of, again, tone it down. It's tough with vintage fabrics because there's such a patina to them. But that was the trick. Adding the tan Rit dye was the trick. So I took the yardage of the lace and then washed it first and then put it in to the dye bath, and then just did as I did with the samples with rinsing it in cold water. And then I did some 7 generations to wash it, and then I let it air dry. And while the lace was drying, I continued working on the dress. So that neckline, just to me, just looked dirty. It didn't look patina or vintage. It just looked dirty to me. So after quite a bit of effort, I finally got that off, and I had some French ecru dye, a vintage Rit dye, which I think is really cute. And so I have some Swiss net that I'm not sure of the fiber content, but I'm guessing that is nylon. So again, doing a sample first, and I'm just trying to tone it down a bit so that it's brighter than what the original was, or how it as found. And then I'm doing enough here too that I'm not just doing the neckline, I'm going to underline the lace sleeves with that. So you can see here it just kind of toned it down from white. So to give it a little bit of body, I'm adding a eco-friendly Mary Ellen's starch to that, and then I'm doubling the layer. So I'm taking the original one and using that as a pattern to kind of lay out. And then I also decided to try it in blue, which the dress came with some netting from the veil, and I decided to go with the blue, so I kind of did that for nothing for the neck. Then I decided I should probably add some facing to the inside of the upper bodice because I was concerned about it not being strong enough. So then that was a whole nother unexpected project, but I got that done. So now back to the sleeves, adding that ecru net underneath the sleeves. And then I stitched them on and realized I put them the wrong sleeves on. So I had to take those off and redo them again. But at this point, it's really testing my patience. Now I have to deal with all those holes. So I hand stitched, kind of making little thread bridges for the worst areas. And then I took those lace motifs and just one by one hand stitched them over. And it really does improve. Of course, none of this is a perfect solution, but it definitely improves it. And I added some of that net to kind of repair that hem. And you can see there's still many, many holes in the lace of this dress, but I definitely addressed the worst ones. I sewed those buttons back on, and here you can see the underarms are so much better. And here she is. I am really surprised at how the blue perked up. So the brown, like I said, started coming off originally out of the water, and then it took the blue off, so I was concerned about it fading, but it actually perked up beautifully. And there's still many issues that remain in this dress, but I'm hoping somebody can wear it one more time. It's 72 years later.